Drum roll. Hello, everybody. Spezis here, Conclave Gaming. So new series we're going to try out is a little bit of role-playing elements. We're going to start out here with a game of Microscope. Those of you who are new to role-playing, maybe you've heard of games like D&D, Apocalypse World, Dungeon World, Lasers and Lasers and Feelings, and other things. Microscope is similar, but this is much more on the structural side. It's world building. It's creating the universe in which fantasy, sci-fi, things of that sort can take place. And so we really seek not to. We start out with a giant picture, an idea, a universe, a theme, and then you start zooming in. You start going closer and closer with different periods of time, different events, different scenes, even. And really the intention is through this format, through this structure, is to go from a giant theme to potentially small things and define the universe that another game could take place in. I really like games that start in Microscope and then move on to another format after the Microscope game, which could take anywhere from an hour to 10 hours if you really wanted to go through the cycle multiple times. Starts at a large hour, or starts at a large theme, goes to a small theme, and then you can, after you finish a Microscope game, you can go back and you can sit down with your gaming group, you can sit down with your GM candidates or whatnot, and you can decide to run another role-playing game inside a different structure, like we said, D&D or Apocalypse World or any sort of game structure here. We're waiting for people to roll in, and as they come in, we'll say hellos and we'll give them the opportunity. If you're listening, currently, if you got the ping, if the bat signal has been seen in the sky from the conclave here, feel free to jump into the ancient grove where we're sitting. We're gonna, I'd like at least 3 people for this game. We've had some thumbs up, our form of interest. When I posted about this in the channel earlier, enough such that we should have at least 3, and I'm going to cap us off at about 6. I find that somewhere between 3 and 6, we have enough momentum going on. You don't have to, oh, what was that? I don't remember that. The past history, knowing what happened is important in Microscope, but you maintaining that momentum, I think, is the fun aspect of this. And of course, this is. I like things light and airy, so we'll hopefully, maybe not. I guess I don't get to define anything here. I'm a spectator as much as I'm a participant. So the GM role, as is typically known in role-playing games, doesn't exist in such that it defines what happens. So this is a group theory making exercise. And so we're going to get involved in that. We're going to go through. We'll start out. So typically, games of Microscope are the structure is pretty simple. Here, we're going to define what is the history, see the environment, the idea, the big theme that occurs inside this universe. Examples as given by the base. The developed book, the base book for it is something like an empire rises, only to grow too large and then collapse in on itself. A nation discovers spaceflight and seeks out the stars, expanding out and ever beyond its horizons, only to uncover a hidden truth or an ancient society. So this idea of a history seed is just a very broad sense of what do you want to do. A group of pirates, a number of shamans, AI conglomerate. It's a broad theme. So then you break that down after creating your history seed into a number of what are we terming palettes here. These are things you want to see more of or you want to see less of. If everybody gets to decide, everybody gets input who participates. So if myself, Aspicis, really like the idea of bows and arrows, you can create something inside the you can create something inside the palette such that bows and arrows need to be important. They should be a central theme. Maybe you don't like the idea of piranhas. Or you don't like the idea of some betrayal. You could throw that on the palette no side and say, as a player, I'm not as excited about this world when it has these aspects, when it has these elements. And so, of course, I don't want to see them. And there's a balancing act. The purpose of role playing, the purpose of Microscope is never to say, you know what, Utogi's sitting here in the channel. Utogi, you I know are a fan of computers and those technological things. I want none of that. We don't intend to, of course, cut anybody out of their excitement, their portrayal, and that's not necessarily the purpose of the palette, but just rather to guide us towards things that we like and away from things that we don't like as a group. After you define the history seed, after you define the palette, we start going into this cycle, and this cycle can occur multiple times. But basically, what the cycle looks like, what it happens inside the cycle, is we all go through and we define first either a light or a dark period. It's a space and time. The Dark Ages were a period. The Renaissance was a period. 1991 was a no wait. Long periods of times where things happen, the Industrial Revolution, stuff like that. So you define a period, you give some details about the period, and you move on. It's not very detail-heavy periods. They're just general themes, large sections of time where other things will occur. So after you've gone through once and everybody's defined a period, we start going into this cycle where one by one, everybody gets a chance to define a focus, and at the end of a series of choices where, so if I were to go through the first set, and you'll see this as we play the game, as I were to go through the first set, we'll define a focus. If it was my turn here, Utogi's first on the list there, he defines a focus. He says, my focus is something, usually it's driven off of what was defined inside those periods. So maybe one of the previous periods about a group of shamanic tribesmen who discover that the world is run by AIs is something about the rise of the AIs or the rise of the men or something. And you say, previously we talked about this. I want to know more. I want us to focus in on this. So you might say, I want to know more about the rise of these shamanic AIs. I want to know more about the travel of this society, how they launch themselves into space. I want to know more about how magic destroyed a society during this period. And so you would say that as a focus. And then the intent of the focus is to once again focus all the people. Utogi wants to know more. We get excited about that. And so we would start creating events and periods centered around that focus. So if the focus was the rise of spaceflight inside a society, maybe that was a light period. But we talk about a dark period slightly after that, when we were confronted with the depths of space and had to come to terms with this giant expansion. You could define an event for that focused period or something similar to the focused period. Maybe there's a character who was essential in the first flight into space. Buzz Aldrin isn't appropriate for a first flight, but say the Buzz Aldrin of that period, and you could talk about an event. Buzz Aldrin's walk on the moon would be an event during the early America's space race. And then after, you've gone through the cycle of defining, either an event or a scene. A scene would be something where we answer a question, we set a setting, and we have an outcome. As you can see over on the left side there, we have a block, we pull in the scene. After you've gone through the cycle once for Utogi's focus, at the end, another person gets to define a legacy. What did you really get excited about inside this cycle? What did you really like? I liked Buzz Aldrin. I liked his walk on the moon. I want to know more about Buzz Aldrin as a character. I want to know more about the event, the walk on the moon. You could define that as a legacy. So after the legacy's been defined, we define a new focus with the next person choosing, but then you've got choices there. You've got things that you can do where you could either choose to use the focus of the current cycle, or you could use the legacy of the previous cycle. And that lends itself towards some interesting things where you've got options. As a creator, as a participant inside a game of Microscope, you can choose where you want to go. Maybe you weren't really excited about Buzz Aldrin's spacewalk. Maybe you were more excited about, the rise of man-eating plants on the surface of the planet. You could talk about that instead. And so we go through these cycles and we continue, each time defining a new focus and defining a new legacy, building on the world that is created. And that gets built out inside this area here, this timeline area, such that the timeline becomes this potential for the world that you live in. I like to always say that a game of Microscope, if you're building it into another game platform, is it's like a novel or an almanac or an encyclopedia. It's something that a history that was pulled up from ancient times, or it's the could be's. You know, if you take a game of Microscope and you build it into a D&D, if you build it into a Blades in the Dark game, you know, you really get to define. It's not. It doesn't have to happen the way that your Microscope game defines. It's just a structure. It's something that you can use. Um, and stuff like that. Does that sound about right, Yutogi? You know, as far as
Yeah,
your understanding goes here.
it sounds about right to me. I mean, you've definitely done a good job listing out all the different mechanics and such to the game, but when it comes down to it, it's really simple, just in that you want to flesh out the world that you're building in various ways, and you just have a couple tools at your disposal. You know, like Aspissa said, you can make a period, you can make an event, you can make a what is it, scenario, I believe.
Scenario, yes.
Um, yeah, and so with those, you also have the lens and the legacies if you want to focus on particular aspects more. But really, those are, I think, your three main tools for fleshing things out. And you generally do go from a larger kind of grand scale and then hammering down into the more specifics of the world as you go on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, yeah. Basically, we're gonna burn a little bit of time here as we wait for more people. I said, oh, 5 Eastern. We're 5:12. A few people let me know that they're gonna be a little bit late. So we've gone through and we've really defined what is Microscope and what is you know, how does it work? How does it play? Basically, with the description that we've given you, if you enjoy the idea of this format, I think, and I think Itogi would agree. You know, you have that ability to after hopefully listening to our first 15 or so minutes, um, if you get excited, if you like the idea, if you're looking for something to enrich your role-playing experience, cha-ching, you know, you can go, you can try this, you can play around with it, you know, 2 hours, hour, maybe, depending on how many people and how long it takes for you to finish a cycle. You know, and you could go multiple cycles. How many cycles, Yutogi, do you think we're going to get to today?
I think if we get a game going here, probably about, I think 5 to 6 cycles maybe is a good number. Maybe four if we're going on the lower end.
Oofta,
Because I
four to
think in
six
the,
cycles.
well, if you get the first kind of 2 to 3, you're really establishing the the larger scale of things, and then like I talked about, once you get, I think, past 4 is where you really start getting into the details. So that at 4, I would say it's just a matter of how specific do you really want to get into the world. If it's something that the players are really interested in, then you might go another 10 cycles. Because you could just keep fleshing it out and add in things. If people maybe don't know where to go with the idea, then maybe it could be cut short and they just go 4. Um, yeah, I think maybe 5 to 6. We'll see.
5 to 6. Well, let's shoot for 5 to 6. If we get that many, that'd be great. If we get more, that'd be fantastic. If we get less, we'll see. Maybe this needs to a part two. Maybe it doesn't. We'll hopefully find out soon. I'm gonna ping some people and see if they're around to jump in. You know, have you started brainstorming, Utogi, ideas about our history seed? You know, as long as we're live, as long as we're here, I think it's completely appropriate to start throwing out those fun ideas for a history seed, and we have people come in and decide if they like that idea or maybe they don't like that idea or whatnot.
Yeah, so I've been trying to come up with a couple of them now. Um, I haven't given a ton of like pre-thought to it, so these are mostly just kind of whatever I can come up with off the top of my head. One thing that's sticking out to me right now was something about ghost pirates. I feel like it'd be interesting to have ghost pirates. It's been done before, but it's
Ghost
but
pirates.
ghost
Ooh.
pirates. That's right. Also, something about mimes. Maybe it's ghost pirate mimes.
Ooh, ghost pirate mimes. Mimes that show up and they won't negotiate except through the
They
interpretive
can't negotiate.
well, well, except through the interpretive language of dance.
I like where this is going.
I do too. I think that's a good start. We'll see what other participants have to say. You know what? You know what? I haven't seen this person in a long time, so I'm gonna ping our dear sweet Duchess and see if we can get her to jump in if depending, first come, first serve, that sort of stuff. But I think that could be interesting. That could be fun.
Yeah, Duchess can get pretty busy, but it'd be nice if she can pop in. That'd be a good opportunity.
Yeah, show some face. I think that'd be great. I think that'd be fun. Could definitely go with that.
So have you had any ideas kind of bounce around in your brain, Auspicious?
Oh, I've had a few. I've had a few. I'm always partial to a nation of dogs. Starting out with a structure. Starting out with a structure. A nation of dogs that, um,
Here
say.
we go.
Oh, well, you know what? So I had this one last time, and I liked it. It was fine. A nation of dogs discover that they're only as good as the people that lead them, and they grow and they develop, and suddenly, after an extended period of time, um, I like the idea of an apex situation being they were just dogs all along, and being ruled over by some higher human-like being. Maybe we'll see. Um, let's see another one. I haven't done a high, either a high fantasy or a sci-fi um, game, true sci-fi, like out in space, for a long time. So, the idea of a nation discovering sky travel, nation discovering sky travel. Maybe this goes steampunk. A nation discovering sky travel.
Ooh, we
Um,
haven't done a steampunk yet. That could be interesting.
that could be really interesting. Maybe that's the way we go. Uh, you know, uh, uh, how do you phrase that though? How do you phrase that? Skypunk, not skypunk, steampunk. Um,
Yeah, usually, I actually, last time we played, I specifically chose something that wasn't high fantasy because that's what I kind of tend towards. So I'm
Yep.
like, well, what can I do that isn't high fantasy? So this time, maybe we could go more towards the more well-established genres such as high fantasy or sci-fi.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, I'm really intrigued by the steampunk idea. I think there's some potential there. I'm seeing something kind of Blades in the Dark-esque in terms of an environment, like a people born inside the mist. And we don't know what the mist is, but a people born inside the mist um, rise up to or begin their path towards industrialization, and
Maybe
encounter
this theme
troubles along the
itself,
way.
maybe this theme itself has supernatural power.
I mean, that could be defined. Well, let's try to keep it broad, but I think the idea of a history seed is as just a people, rise up in a world of steam to, some industrial point, is a good enough starter as
That's a
starters
good
go.
start.
Yep.
Do I understand this correctly that everyone collaboratively kind of makes up a world with different elements?
Yep,
Yes.
everybody, well, you define your history seed is only really, you decide on it together kind of thing. Everybody's excited about creating a world in this sort of general area. So if we were to say, a nation rises up from this mythical steam, um, into what is an industrial revolution, that would be the world seed, and we'd try to exist inside that seed. If we wanted to create something a little bit more science fiction, the galaxy's been at peace for 50 million years, um, but rumbling of rebellion echoes out into the expanse, and heroes or villains respond to it. That could be another general world history seed, something like that. Um, a group of
Yeah.
mice, you know, or something. I don't know. I don't
And
know.
then from the history seed is actually where I guess the technical game start would be, because then you can start defining with that seed that you're going with what light periods and dark periods, what events are going on, what scenarios happen given that. And usually you define periods first, as far as I understand, but that's where it kind of like all kicks off once you've decided as a group what you're going with.
Exactly, exactly.
was always something I found pretty neat in the Myst series. I don't know if any of you,
Oh, Mist,
but
yeah.
there was the secret society that lived underneath the earth. They were a highly intelligent
Ooh.
race, and they used the art to write these books that would allow them to connect their world to another world, and they could travel between those worlds with those books. There was infinite possibilities of worlds.
That's an interesting one.
And you could use that to even tie, if you played multiple Microscope games, you could tie that in with other microscopes too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have we actually considered too much yet the possibility of tying multiple Microscope games together?
I don't know. Gonna be honest, I don't know. Generally, microscope games are, they're huge. They're, world building, such that it's difficult to tie in multiple microscope games together. If you wanted to run a number of very quick microscope games, I think you could definitely tie them together, though. So, if you say your history seed is about a nation or about a people on a planet, and you didn't want to go into, say, science fiction or, science, yeah, sci-fi. You could tie in multiple ones, and then those could all be linked together by, some sort of sci-fi like aspect. Um, Utogi. How about this? How about this? Well, this would be high fantasy. Well, gosh, maybe this. Anyway, um, a planet discovers a planet discovers a psychotropic drug that allows them to communicate with other intelligent life in the universe. And that would be almost just the history seed right there, and then you start breaking into what happens because of those interactions and the events that occur. I'd like to define a you know maybe it's this way. A planet discovers a psychotropic drug that allows you to communicate with other intelligent life forms, to be uh, only to be discovered, or only to be revealed by some future far-reaching race, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Will you be playing Insight? Also, Will?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, I can. I won't be home for another about 15 minutes, but I can at least participate in the discussion before that.
Perfect. Yeah, no, we could use your help defining a history seed.
Sure.
So
What
yeah,
have we talked about?
so the idea. Did you hear the idea I just floated?
Yeah.
So
So my only concern is like the microscope needs to be a very long-term story, right? Because like a period is kind of understood to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like yours doesn't work that way. I just I need to understand how it would.
Gotcha. And I was thinking, the scope of periods would, you'd have some series of discovery of said drug and the effect on the society, and then how they
So like first
interact.
they
And
think it's ghosts.
at first they think it's ghosts, then they discover that, or they figure out, or somehow they know that they're communicating with other intelligent life. Maybe they form a federation. Maybe this is the way that space travel really works. Maybe the
When
idea
the
that,
whole like if the whole thing is a metaphor for long distance relationships.
oh, let's see, like right there, you could throw it
Yeah.
in for something like that, and then there's an end all, such that, um, you know, gosh, I'm thinking 12th dimensional beings, but how does that end? You could just continue with the growth and continue with the events that would occur because you're trying to exist inside this giant, long distance relationship or long distance democracy. But what if there's somebody out there that doesn't have to rely on that? What happens when they get involved? And maybe that's your end game.
Does anyone dislike this idea?
I don't dislike it. It just matters where we take it, I suppose. One thought I had on where we could possibly go with it is if it's something that allows the people to understand and communicate with races which they couldn't previously communicate with, perhaps some of them were there alongside the society all along. And either they were in plain sight or they're invisible, but now they can communicate them. And then they can
Ooh.
actually explore the very deep history they both share, but they didn't know that
and the
they
other
share.
creatures and the other creatures are Pokemon. We got this.
All along.
I think we
Yeah.
can. I think we can work with this. I think that's.
You got to catch them all, Asbestos.
But we've never heard how they feel about catching them. And now we're going to.
And now we're going to find out.
Now we're gonna find out.
How is it not enslavement?
Actually, okay, can I pitch a competing idea? Because like that actually sparked something in me.
Perfect.
So
perfect.
imagine if the Pokemon games and anime we played all happened in like a very short space. And that very short space is going to be defined as the middle of the world that we create. And we explore, what led up to people catching Pokemon and making them fight each other. And how did that turn out?
So you suggesting that as a history seed or as a event or period inside this?
So the bookend would be, so the two bookends are, you start with the relationship between people and Pokemon begins somehow. We'd have to figure out what that is.
Okay.
And then
okay.
the end is some cataclysmic event that definitely redefines that relationship.
Yeah, human beings starting, capturing Pokemon and using them for Pokemon things, and then the end event, of course, being
Right, the ancient Egyptians discover the first Pokeball, or create the first Pokeball.
Yeah. I like that. I like that they, start the ancient Egyptians, create the first Pokeball, and upon journeying into space, we discover the nation of Pokemon. They were a hyper civilized space going race. We discover Pokemon are a space going race. They're right there. Boom.
The only thing I'm concerned with is
Hey,
I'm not
guys.
too. Hey, Lordrick. I'm not too keen on Pokemon lore, honestly. So my vote would have to be against that. But we could just do a generic kind of sci-fi universe if we wanted.
And how would
So I think-
if you
Charmander's
guys
tail
wanted
burn
to
in
just-
space?
Yeah, that is a little true. Pokemon is an established universe,
Can you guys
and
hear me?
yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Pokemon's an established universe, and there are some
I really don't know anything about that.
There's two. Go on, Asbestos.
basically you don't have the ability to create as much, or you have to create within the structure that's already been created in your mind.
So I think the only thing Pokemon lore would tie us to is that there would have to be some event in the middle with every video game and piece of anime we've ever seen. But it would be one period. And the rest of it would be completely up to us. But that said, I'm happy to just do something else.
I think we can accomplish the same idea, just not calling it Pokemon. That way we don't have like preconceived ideas about how we need to treat the dynamic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. So like,
It might modify
I think
your
if
idea
we-
too much.
yeah, I think if we did it with something that wasn't Pokemon, I'd want to not do anything like Pokemon. You know what I mean? Because like
Yeah,
it's such a specific thing where it's like, basically like glamorized dogfighting that I don't think we could do any other way.
But now that you call it glamorized dogfighting,
Fighting?
let's they say
It's
all
much more of
good
a
things. They say all good things come in threes. So
Right.
let's throw out a third idea, and then we can really hash it out.
So one idea that I had, like on a completely different note, I think it'd be cool to tell the story of an aircraft carrier. Especially, you might have heard me pitch this. An aircraft carrier that was launched immediately prior to the apocalypse and survived it. And
That's like that TV show, The Last Ship. Except
Oh,
that one
God,
was
here
with a
we go again.
destroyer or something.
I do like that idea though. So this is more of like a modern day type of setting.
I mean, it could be a steampunk
yeah,
setting.
I mean, well, any time period that has aircraft carrier,
Mhm.
not super.
And
I don't
so
know, it seems
would
like you want to combine that with like a twist, like maybe it's in space or it's, I don't know.
Well, we could definitely the first.
So you said it's post-apocalyptic though, right? Or it is right before the apocalypse? What was this time frame?
So the first bookends start would be immediately prior to the apocalypse, and the
Okay.
end is substantially after the.
So I think a big part of that would be defining what the apocalypse actually was.
Oh right.
Yeah,
which we
it's
would-
let's not
so
go
we
with the
just leave it to
standard
players.
zombies. Let's go with something a little more interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
vampires, you know?
Not
Sure.
zombies. Let's
I
choose
think-
other undead creatures, right?
I think in this case, a very standard nuclear apocalypse would be very.
I could
It
go
could,
with that.
yeah.
I could go with that.
Mm,
And if you really
it's hard
wanted
to believe
to,
that the carriers don't
see,
get
And this
in
is,
instead of nuclear apocalypse.
I think we're zooming in a little too quick, too fast here, because all we're shooting for, bookends is we launched an aircraft carrier. Something happens, and then
Right.
I don't remember what the rear bookend was, but
Probably the aircraft carrier sinks or decays to the point where it's unusable.
Yep.
yeah, it sounds like a sad end, probably.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a happy. It sounds like a dark period, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is I guess up for us to decide. Sinks, finds
is.
Nirvana, goes into what is now the Bermuda Triangle and teleported off-world. Who knows?
Oh, the Bermuda Triangle has to be part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I saw triangle. I don't care what.
I think I could go for this. Like, I think this has enough growth potential inside of it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Of course, if we're gonna have an aircraft carrier involved, we have to have Black Bob in here,
that's a
doesn't?
good
I mean,
point.
like,
This is Ping Black Bob. Tell him we're telling a story about an aircraft carrier. with
Oh
expertise.
gosh. We require expertise. All right.
And then the reactor on floor 37 went down. Call the code 48B.
I'll throw him a ping and we'll see if he's available.
I do like the idea, though. I think this one's
Thank you.
got some merit to it.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. My only concern is that the only people sitting in this room are conclavites, and I really wanted some drakes to come in here.
I mean, it is an open door, so I'm more than willing
Still have
to.
space, too.
Yeah, we still have space. Definitely willing. I pinged a few of them who expressed interest. One of them said they might be able to jump in about an hour. Another one said that they're at work and that I'm a terrible person for, of course, selecting my free time as approximately 5 Eastern.
Of course.
Of course,
You
of
are a
course.
terrible person.
A villain, a true villain.
Yes.
But I like that. Okay, history seed. Hummus launch humanity.
And,
Okay.
I
say it
think
again.
At
and I think while he's doing that, we can discuss the palette a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Yutogi, do you want to start? Like, is there anything you do or don't want to?
I'm thinking it should take place in a modern period. Like, I feel like there's actually enough in just a modern world that is suffering a nuclear apocalypse that we can tell plenty of story with, rather
So
than
modern is
going
like today.
like
plus or
today,
minus-
or yeah,
So you want no fantasy elements, is what you're saying?
essentially.
Okay. Okay.
Let's do non.
Okay.
It has to all be
Non-fantasy.
scientific fantasy. No high, low fantasy, high fantasy, whatever fantasy. Fuck it all. Yeah. So, okay, here's the question then.
Easy.
Here's a
Join what?
question. Here's a question, Yutogi.
Yes.
Wormholes. How fantasy are wormholes?
Well,
They're science.
I feel like that's a very bookend thing, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
One joins by simply joining. It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. What is this? What is
Open up the
Microscope?
document. We're building a world.
What document?
Tabletop gaming channel.
Yep. So we're going through. We're playing a Microscope game. We're gonna define some fun little events inside a universe, and maybe use it someday to play. Say, I think Apocalypse World will definitely lend itself to this format.
Oh my god, this is a classic apocalypse.
Classic apocalypse world. Yep. So okay. So history sheet. Humanity launches an aircraft carrier at the dawn of the
With a lot
apocalypse.
of gun luggers.
Mm-hmm. So many gun luggers.
Do we
Why
need
is
a bookend still?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to word it though. You know.
Well, I mean, the carrier is rendered unusable by physical forces. So, it's hit by a torpedo, it, runs ashore, it,
How about
is
if
no
I just
longer able
say
to be
the
repaired.
carrier is rendered useless? Because that doesn't
I
necessarily
think it
mean
should
that
sink.
it needs to sink or it doesn't need to sink. We can just still have it sink or not sink, but at the end of the day, we get to
Okay,
decide
that
whether
does
or
leave it
not
open.
the carrier is alive, is dead. We don't have that preconception right now. I think we're
Sure.
going to get there.
Cool.
And 99% of the time the carrier sinks, so but you never know. Regardless.
Okay, do we save humanity from the apocalypse? That seems to be like we have a happy ending or the a tragic ending,
Well, are you interested in finding out?
Well, I'm saying is that your ending? I mean, like
Well, I
if
don't
you
know.
say you bookend it.
I see. I mean, I bookend it with a more or less open bookending to see where we could develop it to.
Yeah, maybe the carrier sunk, but everyone got off
Okay.
safe. We could do all different things with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like this is of course
Maybe
first
this is
oh
New
so
Atlantis.
But Loadrig, if there's a particular thing you want to see, then, put it in the palette.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And
okay.
by the way,
Well, I
is your
would have to.
palette.
No, you're fine.
I do want to clarify this one point. When it says humanity launches aircraft carrier, does this mean that there's is this like the United Nations or is this a particular country?
I don't know
'Cause
yet.
if
The
it's
United
modern,
States. Why don't we just say
then
it's the
it
United
has to be the
States?
United
Because it-
States
I'm good with that.
or Britain. If you could make it the British. They're the only other people with aircraft carriers.
Oh, but their teeth.
Yeah, but
I also put in palette yes, operational technology, because I think it's much more interesting if they still have working systems to deal with problems.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would echo what Yutogi said, and I would put in the palette under green. I would probably put either hard sci-fi or no sci-fi fantasy. So in other words, I don't think we need to add magic.
Well, we already said non-fantasy, so magic
Okay,
and
so everything that
supernatural
covers that,
is
that's
already off the table.
We
Yeah.
could put hard sci-fi though,
We can definitely put hard sci-fi.
if that's what your aim
Yeah.
is.
So I don't really
That
care
would
if the user
eliminate,
is not hard sci-fi. I just don't want there to be like non-hard sci-fi.
Gotcha.
I feel you. I feel you.
Okay.
So in the palette under yes, I am going to put a word that we're all really excited about, and it starts with a P and ends with an iris.
Yes.
See, pirates got in here somehow.
Hey, but it's not fantasy
Okay.
pirates. It's pirate
Now,
Now
pirates.
can we also
Yeah.
add ninjas?
maybe the characters
Yeah.
are pirates.
Insight? I was just about to say that.
We can definitely
I
add
don't think we
ninjas.
can.
Well,
Great
Is
mind.
there-
Take a shot at.
you can't
Is
add.
there
You could add
dojo
assassins.
facilities on that carrier for
Oh,
military
these are
training.
good ninjas.
What about Pyrinjas?
Pyrinjas.
It's raids by Japan.
Okay, well, what I want to have here is a non-standard apocalypse. Something that's not been done before. It can't just be like
So
standard
not
zombies,
nuclear then.
nuclear.
So no zombies is what you're
Non-standard
saying.
apocalypse. Well, I'd say no standard apocalypses.
Hoofda. Okay, we're gonna with no standard apocalypse. We're definitely gonna have to think outside the box then.
Yeah.
Let's say standard.
Especially without fantasy, non-standard apocalypse or small, few, far in between.
I think it might be better to define some specific ones that we don't want, because I think standard might be a bit too relative.
Well, the way I'm thinking we could go about this, how do we feel about no standard apocalypse beginners? Because we have to use more or less standard apocalypse themes. So you could have something like solar radiation. We got hit by a gamma ray burst from something. 1 in a billion, trillion, gazillion chance. You could have biological weapons. But how do you do biological weapons without zombies? Okay, maybe you're right. You're right.
Just mass death.
Well, I suggested have vampire apocalypse. You know, a little bit like what was that Will Smith movie?
I mean,
Last Man or something.
I Am Legend.
I Am Legend. Yeah.
I Am Legend.
We're very much
that's
tiptoeing the zombie line.
Biological. Yeah, it's biological, but it's not the standard.
Okay,
quote,
I got you.
rabies type, zombie. And no nuclear, just straight up war is just dumb. And it's like, we would have to have the carrier in the war or it wouldn't make any sense.
So a specific no. Give us a specific no. I think that's the way we handle this.
So no war apocalypse, no zombie apocalypse.
So no war, no zombie. I mean, to me, I think a very interesting question is, how did a carrier manage to not get sunk during war?
Exactly. But that's just not an interesting story of like, oh, it's just a military story at that point.
Oh, okay.
I think
it's Binkoff's battlefield.
You can try to come up with alternatives, though.
So
I mean, it's basically one event. Would be how the carrier.
So let's cut the fat. Do you want no war or do you want no zombies?
I'd say the no war is more important.
Okay. All right, so there was no war advent to the apocalypse. It was not started because of war or because of war events. Okay. ZZ, do you have anything you wanted to see, not wanted to see?
No.
Okay. And then I got mine in there. I got pirates. So I'm happy with pirates. Insight, you got one, didn't you? Operational, no. I don't know.
Is it my turn?
I have a question.
I haven't defined a list yet,
Sure,
so we're gonna get there.
What's with the aircraft carrier?
That's the main idea for what world building we'll be doing, is focused around a aircraft carrier that was launched at the dawn of the apocalypse, and eventually it's, by the end of this story we're coming up with, is rendered useless.
So these people escaped an apocalypse on an aircraft carrier?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Alright.
Well, I think the idea is that it was the normal commissioning of the aircraft carrier, like maybe it was doing sea trials, and then the apocalypse happened.
Could be.
Definitely could be.
Like, ZZ, did you ever see that TV show, The Last Ship?
No.
Alrighty, here we go.
Okay.
So I think that basically completes our palette here. So we're gonna have operational technology has to exist inside this universe. There's gonna be pirates, or we should have an effort to include some sort of piracy events inside there. No fantasy. That brings basically ghosts, magic, those sort of themes off the table. Supernatural. A very down-to-earth kind of thing. So war did not start the apocalypse. That's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And Zerial pleaded the 5th. Anything else that we're feeling right here? I'd like to see 1 or 2 more yeses. And first come, first serve, I think, is the best way to handle this.
Factions on the carrier.
Makes sense.
Factions. Alrighty. And maybe another yes. What's something that gets your jimmies in a rumble?
Can we do trading by aircraft?
Interesting.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's particularly interesting to have aircraft on an aircraft carrier. I thought that's pretty much a given.
Yeah, but that's
what
you say it here.
Yeah.
Wait, if there's trading via aircraft, does that mean there's more than one aircraft carrier that survived the apocalypse?
I don't know. Does it?
It has to. That's what the has.
Maybe. Maybe not.
They could be trading with someone on the ground. I mean, it means you're taking the aircraft from the aircraft carrier to another thing you can land on.
I mean, I see a lot of potential here. Pirates and
Maybe
trading
they're
via
trying to
aircraft.
establish a ground base or something.
Yeah, like to me, they're gonna run out of food eventually. Where are they gonna get it from? I mean, there's got to be islands along the way.
All right. So then let's move into the next section. We're each going to define a period. We'll put it up on the timeline. I needed to really do the bookends first, but that's fine. Yeah. So we're gonna go through the list: Utogi, Insight, Lodric, Zerial, and then me. And we'll go through and define our first periods. And if I can remember, if you interact with it, please do copy and paste rather than what I just tried to do and just drag it over. And that'll get us underway. Utogi, if you want to start
Okay,
us
so you
out
just
with
define
something.
the first one there.
That is not what I wanted. Let's see here. Help me. What did I do?
Or do we want to just call that the maiden voyage, perhaps?
Yeah,
Or
we can call it the maiden voyage.
voyage beginning.
That's fine.
Shakedown sea trials.
There we go. Okay, we're sorry, I ended up fudging up all of my something. Air travel is useless and that and that and that. Oh, perfect.
Is there just like military people on this aircraft carrier?
I don't know. We haven't
saw
defined that
me?
yet. You got to stop thinking about this, Serial. Like we know things.
Feels like there's some shit that-
We don't know anything right now. So like, okay, so we've got maiden voyage. We got aircraft is rendered useless. We need a period inside here. And Utogi, what is the first period that we feel happens?
Okay.
Are these periods in chronological order, or are you just define them
can-
light and dark group?
Light and dark, and we can
I
bounce
mean, maiden
around.
voyage.
So the timeline
Maiden
will
voyage.
read
Dark.
left to right. So
Hey guys,
that-
1 second.
Sure. The timeline will read left to right. So basically, the things that happen chronologically as we define them, first is on the left and moving farther and farther to the right. We'll have to expand it as more events, periods, scenes get defined inside here. But you can jump around. You could start out. We can't go before the maiden voyage, and we can't go after per se the aircraft carrier is rendered useless. But inside that history seed, inside those two bookends, you have freedom to jump around as much as you want and do whatever you can, whatever you want to in terms of defining what is creating the world as it is worked.
The difference between a light and dark period.
Okay.
One's bad or negative, the other one's good.
Oh, gotcha.
We're talking tone,
Yeah,
is it-
Yeah, gotcha.
Mhm.
Some like our last game Asbestos and I played, it can get relative, as in like from which viewpoint. To one group in the story it'd be light, and to another it's dark. But you generally pick like a certain side and say for this side it's going to be a light period or a dark period. I
Gotcha.
assume we're going to be talking about the carrier. So if something bad happens.
Well, yeah, like you
Recently,
mentioned,
my headset.
food shortages, mechanical breakdowns, those are obvious darks.
Yeah.
Once again, I don't
They could
remember.
really go anywhere.
I don't remember if you jumped in when we were describing Microscope and all that. Periods are long periods of time. The Industrial Revolution was a period. The Dark Ages was a period. The expansion of
Alright.
an empire is a period.
know what it
Events
is.
are or more. Suddenly we zoom in. Microscope. We zoom in, and so an event is something that occurs in a period, or generally inside a period. And is smaller, and then a scene is something smaller yet that might occur inside an event or around an event or something like that. And we'll each go through first defining just a period. That is the first round. We need to get some flesh on our bones. So
Alright, so
Gotcha.
I'm defining this first period here, which is going to be a dark period called the Silence. Is this going to be the period where they stop hearing back from command or whoever they were communicating with? Radio silence, essentially.
ooh, radio silence
Okay.
with command is broken.
Because,
I like that.
okay. So the apocalypse is happening because of this, but they're not fully aware yet. That kind of the idea.
Yeah, probably. As in, like, something has happened, except from their perspective, they won't know what it is.
Hmm.
Is that appropriate? I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, I gotcha. Interesting.
Then I guess that would be followed by discovery of, the investigation of the apocalypse period.
Once again, you don't have to think of it as a linear, time. It doesn't have to be next and next and next. You can jump around as much as you want. I don't know if Insight. So right now, if you look down inside the Google document, we've got turn and we got lens markers. If Insight is not so much as doing other things, I think he might have jumped off on a personal call or something real quickly. Um, we would move to him next and he would define the next thing. I think he's gone unless he responds in the next 20 seconds. We'll move on to you, Lodric. But again, yes, you get to define a period, and it's wherever you want it to be, and it's about more or less whatever you want it to be.
You could even define the period at the end of the so-called book if you wanted, as in like what actually the period is when it's rendered useless.
And don't get too attached to where your period is located per se. So like Utogi said, the silence is radio silence is occurring, between command. That could happen towards the
maybe
end
that
of the
happens
story.
halfway through.
That could happen at the very beginning, at the end, because I have the ability now when it's my turn or your turn or Serial's turn to say, I can create any other period in between the maiden voyage and this radio silence. This radio silence period could be something completely different. So just don't get too attached to where that period is located per se.
Okay. Then here's an idea. We're going to call this period drifting, where there's been a mechanical breakdown and they can't move, so they're just drifting with the current.
Ooh, I like that.
And of course, I think that could probably also coincide with maybe food shortages. Because they can't get to anywhere to get the food, So basically, it's a bunch of breakdowns and deficiencies and whatnot. So
Great.
just call it like the drifting.
Perfect. Do you want to create and move that period, or do you want me to do that for you?
Just stick it somewhere in the middle there. Yeah, we don't have to define it right now, I guess. Okay. But I wouldn't put it right after the silence. It seems like it has to have occurred later because that amount of breakdown takes time.
So just after the silence and before the carrier's rendered useless.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm back. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. We skipped you and we'll come back to you. So we've got the silence when communication is lost, and we've got adrift, the period where we're adrift due to mechanical failure. Both dark events, of course. Now it is your turn, Insight.
Yeah, let me think. I mean, I feel like we need another light event, another light period here.
Yeah.
And I think that light period should be about a time of great abundance in resources. And what would that be called?
The abundance?
No. I think the golden years.
The golden years.
Or you know what? I want to call it the rule of the king of the flight deck, and see where that takes us.
Ooh, a strong leader rises.
Yes.
Yeah, that seems like it should really tie in really strongly with the factions as well.
I don't know where it's going to go, but I threw a light period here. And it is... What did you want to call it, Insight?
The rule of the king of the flight deck.
It needs no explanation, of course. Perfect. The rule of the king of the flight deck. And I don't know where that exists exactly. You thinking pre-silence, post-adrift, pre-adrift?
Yeah, I kind of like it where it is, Aspissus. I think you did a good job.
I think I did a good job, too. Good job, Aspissus.
All
right. Yeah, right? All right, Serial, what have you got? Show me what you got.
It's a dark period after the adrift called the culling. due to food shortages, they had to kill off or abandon a number of their crew
Oh man.
to not die.
Dark
Yeah,
times.
dark times. Very dark
Yeah,
times.
we need another color of dark for this darkness.
Double dark. We're gonna
The
double
dark,
down
dark
on the
period.
dark. It's the dark. It's the dark
Um,
dark. Yep.
It's
There
like an
is-
Oreo with dark filling.
The reason I like the culling is because whatever faction was in charge at the time, the other factions probably aren't too happy with them anymore.
And that was after Adrift. I kind of
After Drift, yeah.
after Adrift.
Doran, thank you for including my palette item in your period.
What?
Oh, well, I put factions in the palette.
Oh yeah, no, I got you, man.
So
I actually came up with it after you established factions.
Oh.
I was just gonna be the culling, was just fucking killing off people, because
Yeah, man.
to stay alive.
Well, so let's see. The culling, which is conflict amongst factions. Is that appropriate? You think that's a good description?
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect.
I feel like the words the
Goes
culling.
beyond conflict. I think it means elimination of a faction. would be-
Well, I don't know which faction, and
Or-
we could say elimination.
we don't have
I feel like whichever faction was in charge just took off percentages of every faction, and like that didn't make a lot of people happy.
How about that? I'll just remove the
But-
the word.
Or they just kicked off like the next strongest faction and just killed all of them.
Yes,
maybe
yes,
they
yes.
marooned them. You know, that seems more like the nautical thing to do. You don't have to actually throw them in the water. You just leave them on shore somewhere.
Okay. Google Docs, you curse you.
I like the maroon thing. Well, this was like post Adrift, so that I don't think they would have the option to find island unless someone puts a period before the culling,
Well, then
where they like
if
run
it
aground.
can't move, then it's still in the adrift. But you know,
Yeah, right.
And we'll get to define those details later. So I think we've got a light period coming up because I like the idea of a light period. And I like the
Perfectly
idea of
balanced.
I like the light period being between Adrift and the culling. And
Perfectly
I think what happened in between the Adrift and the culling, and I'm gonna call it paradise. I'm gonna call it Paradise Found. The classic literature kind of thing.
So
and
it's
I think,
interesting. So there was a mechanical failure, then there was paradise,
Mhm.
and then they killed people.
and I think,
So the culling was not a result of the mechanical failure.
I mean, it might have been,
What-
and it could have.
What if this paradise
But it could've
found
been.
was a false paradise?
See, that's
See, yeah.
definitely possible. But Paradise Found.
But it's not because it's a light event.
Well, it is a light event, and I mean, it could be we went through this before, Insight. Remember, this is perspective.
No. This is different. This is different because
Okay.
if we say it's light, it probably can't be a full because then it has to be a dark period.
Okay. So this is
Well,
what I'm
it's the
thinking for.
finding out that is what's the dark afterwards.
This is what I'm thinking Paradise Found is. While adrift, they come upon a very small island. And it is a respite to the problems that they've been having. There's some resources that they can use. Land is a great boon for the mentality and the morale of the crew. And in kind of like in certain classical literature about ship travel, you might want to stay. But should you? I don't know. Yeah, Paradise Found. I'm just gonna leave it Paradise Found. I think that's okay. That's a period of Paradise Found. Maybe there's other boons that occur. Maybe there's not. I don't want to go too because I'm borderline event there with Paradise Found, and maybe you can talk me out of that. But yeah, let's go with that.
Mall paradise.
Okay. It's time to play the game.
Alrighty, so let me just reformat this here. So now at the top of the order, Utogi is going to define a lens. And if you remember what a lens is just what do you want to hear more about? What was something that intrigued you? Something that you little piece of junk. Okay, sorry. Something that intrigued you, something that you liked, something that you want to hear more about. So Utogi, why don't you define our lens here?
I think I want to hear more about the rule of the king of the flight deck.
Oh, me too.
Sounds pretty interesting to me.
Yeah.
Strong leaders are always.
Okay.
You struggling with that Paradise Fountain?
I'm really struggling. I wanted the dot there, and I couldn't get the dot to move where I wanted. So now it's just at the bottom, and that's okay. So
I got you, Spices.
you got it. You got it. You got
got
it.
it.
All right. So we've got a lens. We've got a lens. There's not a note place for the lens, is there? I always thought there was. Anyway.
Right here.
Oh,
Focus.
there you go. See, right there. And it's not the Enlightenment. Is it the Enlightenment? It's not the Enlightenment. No, it is the King. The King of the flight deck.
Oh my God, Spices.
Oh no! Wait! No, it's fine.
King of the
Sorry.
North?
King of the
It's
North.
King of the
Wait.
North. Is it the north side of the ship? Because that changes often.
Yeah,
feel
they have to run to the other side.
He's just constantly running around the ship trying to stay north.
Perfect. King of the flight deck. Here we go. Too many spaces. All right. King of the flight deck is our focus. You get to define a period or an event, Yutogi, and then the rest of
How
us.
about a scenario?
Or a scenario.
Scene.
Or scene. Sorry. Yes.
Scene.
Scenes from a hat.
Technical terminology.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm thinking, since this is a play age, we're going to have the question, who became king of flight deck? Who is the king?
I give up. I can't modify this thing.
And the setting is going to be, what is it? Lower floors, lower levels?
What on earth am I hearing right now?
Pretty sure it's a wild.
Come.
Outside.
He's just
Cereal.
eating cereal.
Oh God, Jesus!
Mute yourself.
That's just about a bad streaming right there.
Come on, Laundry.
Who became the king of the flight deck? Ooh.
If I can type.
Oh man, I'm getting some Waterworld like vibes here. Like, God, it's not Kevin Spacey. If Kevin Spacey, I'm gonna. Who cares? It's Kevin Spacey now. No, what's
All right, and now the outcome has to be who actually did become the king of flight deck.
Well, who became the king?
Well, let's see. Tim just flum. No, I'm just kidding.
I believe he is a one microscope character, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to think of what would be a fancy name. If anyone has any cool king-sounding names from a somewhat modern period.
Well, I don't think it should be
Yeah,
a
sure.
king-sounding name. It should be a the kind of a
Well-
guy who, enlists to be on an aircraft carrier.
Ted.
Someone who would be a leader, essentially, is what I'm meaning.
Robert
The
Black.
guy's named Bob.
Was it Robert?
It's
I
gotta
heard
be
a Bob and a Robert.
Robert the Black.
Robert. All right, here we go. I know what you're getting at.
Robert the Bob.
Robert.
Good job.
Black.
The Bob.
Now, okay, I'm not gonna do this anymore throughout the game, and I'm not gonna stand on rules too much, but just because we want to get off on the right foot. So Yutogi,
Okay.
because you define
What
the
do you
line, either you can make a period and an event, or an
Okay.
event and a scene. So to make this legit, just put an event on top of this,
Okay.
like the king is crowned or something. I don't care.
Beautiful.
Getting all our stuff in order.
The king is crowned. Long live the king. King of the Andals. Man. And I'm getting like Lord of the Flies too. Like, man. We can go all sorts of directions here. All right, so Robert Black is crowned king of the flight deck. Through the scene as defined by Yutogi. What happens next? Or what happens? What else happens? What else happens? That's a good one. What else happens inside?
Yeah, I think I have some really good ideas about, because there's more men on this carrier than there are women.
Mm.
And I think that's something that is probably very relevant to the story. I think I'm just gonna say, because I don't want to get too dark too quickly. The redefinition of the laws of marriage.
Ooh. So that just
And
happened.
that is what. And remember, the rule of the King of the Flight Deck is a light period, so that actually led to something good.
Interesting. 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 So there we go. Now, logic. Let's continue this building exercise. Logic.
He's busy eating cereal.
He's busy eating cereal. Lodrig is busy eating cereal, so we'll move on to cereal.
Oh God.
Hey, wait.
Is
No,
all right? Perfect. Thank God.
I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here.
So the focus is King of the Flight Deck. Come up with an event or a scene centered around more or less the King of the Flight Deck.
Okay. So the period. Okay, so we're not doing the periods anymore. We're doing these.
Yep, so as we
And it
go
has to
through
be-
the cycle for the lens, when you get the lens token, you'll be able to define a new period. Otherwise, you're limited, or a period and an event, or an event and a scene. Otherwise, you're limited to an event and a scene, I believe, is the technical rules.
Okay. So question setting an outcome. That's what needs to be defined here, or I don't know. I'm drawing a blank.
We'll let you think about it. Zero,
Maybe you
if
should go on
if
to
you have anything.
ZZ.
So, do I add a scene or an event to this?
You can add a scene, event, or a period, anywhere you'd like.
All right, I'm gonna add a light event. I don't know how to do this, but it's after the laws of marriage aboard the ship are redefined. Because they were redefined, a new generation of people are added to the ship. All women are pregnant, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how
So
to describe that.
maybe the birth of.
Birth of the next generation. If you've got a name for them, that'd be great.
Oh, the baby boom, maybe.
I'll call them Gen X for now.
Okay.
If you have a name, Zero, for the generation, give it to him now.
I don't. Gen X, the Generation X.
Oh.
No, call it Generation A because they're starting over from scratch on the carrier.
I like Generation A.
Okay, the birth of Gen A. So the
Can have a Gen B somewhere later.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good naming convention.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot more sense than like
Do you have anything
baby
else,
boomers.
Logic?
No.
Any ideas?
Okay, so we can do periods again?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. I think there has to be a period that's, I don't know, discovery or investigation of, the mainland. What's happened on the mainland.
So there is a mainland. Okay.
Well, let's call it the search. The period where we're searching for the answer to the apocalypse.
Do you
What
think
happened?
that's a light period or a dark period?
Gray.
It probably ends up being dark because you discover that everyone is dead.
Yeah. You just keep looking and
Or
they're not
worse.
out there.
Or something equivalently terrible.
Yeah. So I think this would be after your silence. Not necessarily immediately, So after Silence, but there could be a lot of space between that and the Rule of the Flight deck. So just put a dark period after Silence. Call it, I don't know, the Discovery,
The rediscovery.
or the Investigation, or the yeah, go with Investigation.
Horrors of the New World.
Ooh, the horrors of the new
The
world.
post-apocalypse.
Was it before the King of the Flight deck? Or...
After,
Yeah,
right?
it would have to be before that, but not necessarily immediately after. No, I mean saying it has to be after Silence, before Rule of the Flight deck.
Yeah, I'm assuming he'll just.
I don't know. It is a specific. He might put it somewhere stupid. Somewhere doesn't make any
Forgot to
sense.
get that button with it. There we go.
In the palette.
That is now the yes palette.
Lots of horrors in the new world.
Yep.
Fun. Who's an inevitable horror in their life?
Of course, you will never hear me if my mic is muted. So
And that's an important
that
part
is
of
an
it.
important part of this sort of communication, is to be able to hear. And with that in mind, I think that there is the horrors of the New World, laws of marriage. Um, I think there's an event, and I think there's a passing on of the title of King Robert the Black. So the title of king, and it's a light event. Oh, sorry, not a period. I don't want a period. Light event that occurs, and this light event is, of course, the hopefully. Hmm. Okay. This light event, of course, is the King Robert passes on his title. I think King Robert, much like the great leaders of his time, of all time, recognized that the love of power and the power of love are inversely proportional, and therefore, rather than hoard his title past his effective time, he passes it.
Oh wow, voluntarily.
Mm-hmm. He chooses. That brings us back to the top of the order. Yep, Utogi got the things Utogi wanted. So now I guess we get to define a legacy, and this is going to start from the bottom and go to the top, and I should have inverted this list, but that's fine. All right, so legacies, what do I get to decide as a legacy here? What do I want to see more of from what we have so far? I think the horrors of the New World is an important legacy. I think that is something that we can develop. What do you think would be a good focus insight?
I was just thinking about that. I think one thing I'd like to focus on is the use of military equipment
Just
post-apocalypse.
Fantastic.
So repurposing.
Well, or not repurposing, right? We talked about pirates.
Yeah.
the use of military equipment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We do need to kind of ask ourselves in what period the piracy is occurring. We didn't really define a
We do.
period where we.
We certainly do.
Mhm.
So just to start us off, I'm gonna make some movements here, as best as that's all right.
No, you go right ahead. I'm having a hard time with the drawing regardless. It wants me to roll into a hole here.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the time when King Robert authorized military strikes against bad faith trading partners.
Ooh.
And we're learning a little bit more now about why King Robert was so popular.
He had trading partners.
Because he had
That's
the balls to do it.
All right. King Robert authorizes some military strikes against bad faith trading partners. Are you going to make a period or a light event
So
here?
I have the option now to make a scene, and I'm going to decline. Because I don't like I have a few scenes in mind, but I don't have to answer any questions. They're just cool scenes of people, launching aircraft off a post-apocalyptic carrier and dropping bombs, and that's cool, but it isn't narratively interesting. So I'll pass on. I'll pass on the scene.
Gotcha. Alrighty.
It brings us to Ludwig.
Brings us to logic. I need to move the turn marker. And you, Togi, don't worry. You're going to be ending the round, so.
No, it's totally okay.
Okay. So legacy is basically a period, something we want to focus more on in the story.
Legacy is an
Get-
option. If you don't like the focus, you can choose the legacy.
But you like the focus.
Okay, and
Right, Ludwig?
and what's the focus again?
The use of military equipment in the post-apocalypse.
Oh, okay, that thing you got up there. And if I go with that, I get to define it somehow?
So you get to make a period, event, or setting that has to do with the use of military equipment in the post-apocalypse.
Okay. Okay, well, let's maybe define this as a period then. I guess like the war against the pirates, era period.
Oh,
where this is gonna happen in.
yes. Is this immediately before the mechanical failure?
Yeah, in fact,
Maybe
that
that's what
sounds
caused it.
good. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a little bit of battle damage, or the use of these resources actually kind of contributes to it. So we just call it the anti-piracy crusade, the crusade against the pirates.
The Pirate Crusade.
Well, that would sound like it was a crusade by pirates. Whereas
Maybe
we're
that's what they
against
call
pirates.
themselves.
Who? The carrier?
Yeah.
Wait, you're saying the carrier is the pirates, or?
It's pirates fighting pirates.
No, we're under the rule of law. We are civilized. Of course, the people on the carrier
right.
wouldn't.
What was I
They'd
thinking?
never be pirates. All right.
No, gosh, no.
Did you have the ability to
So that
add
makes them the ninjas, I guess.
Yes.
Perfect. Right. So
Can we be ninjas?
this was a what? A dark event?
Actually, I think this could be relatively light because I'm presuming that an aircraft carrier wins when it tries to attack other shit.
Gotcha.
You and your little speedboats the fucking Somali pirates use? Br-
All right. So, and this was labeled as the Flight of the Concords.
I
No,
thought
wait.
this was going to be I thought this was a period.
Okay. Well, this is a period. You're right. Completely. I'm multi-managing here, so. If you,
Battle of the Pirates.
Miss Fissis, I just want to reiterate how wonderful it is that someone else is running this game.
Yeah, I'm sure you love that. Sure.
It's
All right.
wonderful, actually.
We could call it the Great Pirate Turkey Shoot.
Like shooting pirates in a barrel.
I was half tempted to label great as great instead of great, but I wrote it as great
Yeah, but
instead.
it needs to be Turkey Shoot. Turkey Shoot.
Great pirate turkey shoot.
Great pirate turkey shoot. All right, and where did this occur again?
Prior to a drift.
Prior to a drift. What a nice period prior to a drift. Alrighty.
Times.
Good times. Good times. Alright, so we've got the Great Pirate Turkey Shoot. Moving on to Zerial.
Am I able to put an event under other periods? That like it has to do with the King of the Flight Deck, but it goes under the Great Pirate Turkey Shoot.
Yeah.
An abundance of resources from looting the dead pirates.
So we've got
how do you
another
loot them
event.
if you blow them up?
Well, you don't
I think
blow all their
the
stuff
pirate
up.
base, I guess.
Well, you blow not. You don't blow up all the pirates with aircrafts. You have
Okay.
other guns, other means
Okay.
of weaponry.
The salvage of the Turkey Pirates, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, but
Turkey
they're not the
pirates?
turkey pirates. I'm referring to
What
the.
what if these pirates are Turkey pirates? They're like from Turkey.
They could be from Turkey,
Mediterranean.
or from the nation formerly known as Turkey.
They should formerly known as Turkey. Do we know what they're formerly known
I
as?
don't know. We get to define those things, Serial.
We haven't been there yet, so they're just the Turkey pirates.
Turkey Pirates.
Yeah, I was referring to I believe the Battle of the Coral Sea,
Mm-hmm.
or the Great Marianas. Took in the Second World War. So they named it that as an homage. But if the pirates are actually Turkish, then I guess that gives it a double.
Gives it a double entendre. There we go, right there. All right.
Double whammy.
Perfect. So
Rip Turkey.
I think there's a scene in the salvage of the Turkey Pirates here. What was their focus? Use of military equipment. I definitely think there's a scene inside the salvage of the Turkey Pirates where they recommission some sort of, like they salvage. Basically, I want deep sea diving here, but using cobbled together military equipment. Whether that means they're using, they've discovered some small sub-like thing that was attached to the bottom of the carrier.
They've hollowed out a 1,500-pound bomb and put a telescope on it.
And I think this is a light event. I think I'm okay with a light event here. Okay, could you
And it's like a one-man vehicle.
Just snorkels.
I mean,
Maybe
any
maybe
man,
100 meters.
any man who does this is at least half a man, right? Wait.
Oh yeah.
Just people snorkeling.
Hmm. What did we say? What was it? A something, something, something. We said it was a something, something, something.
Modified bomb. Is that what he said?
All right, hey guys, I gotta go pay more attention to work. I might be back soon though.
Yep, good to see you.
All right, thanks later.
I could just jury rig something together to
Mhm.
build it from scratch. I mean, since you figure pirates would have a bunch of random loot anyway, materials maybe.
We're going to say a modified bomb
Engines.
casing. Modified a bomb casing into a what is it called? A hood, a bell hood or something like that. Diving bell. There we go.
Oh, okay. Well, that's just for diving. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're close enough here. Would it be too bad to say we discovered the city below?
or
No.
world here.
No, that's yeah, you're right. Water world, two water world. Modified bomb casing into the diving bell. Let's see. Encountered. No, not encounter the dozens of the deep because that's too fantasy. That's too fantasy. What? So what is
Yeah.
in the depths? They modify a bomb
Well,
casing into a diving
well,
bell.
just marine salvage seems like the obvious thing.
I think that's fine. Marine salvage. Okay.
Guys, I have to go
Maybe
to
they
bed.
find signs of life because it's deep enough down it wasn't affected by the apocalypse.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Or is it not human life though?
Yeah, but
See you later.
they have. I don't know if they've even caught fish as much as they'd like to.
I gotta go to bed, guys. I have work tonight.
Alrighty.
Dudes.
Okay, see you, Dorn.
Discovers signs of life. Interesting, interesting, interesting. I think that's pretty good. So let's round out the top here with Utogi.
Okay, so use of military equipment, our current
Mhm.
focus. Here's what I'm thinking. If you could put a dark event right below the mechanical failure, the adrift period, and I'll actually just, I suppose, start writing it. Once you have it. Okay, so the idea is, this being a very rare event, there's a large ship type approaching detected on radar, and they have no steering or engine power to maneuver.
Dead in the water. What do
Yeah.
you do? Interesting, interesting, interesting. Okay, okay. So let's before we forget too much out of this, let's go up to Lodric. Lodric, or actually, Zerial left. Zerial, you left. Come on back, Zerial. I was gonna have Zerial define a legacy, but he can't do that right now. So we're gonna jump around a little bit. Utogi, you're gonna get to define a legacy, and Lodric, you're gonna get to define a lens. And I think we're gonna stop there for today. I'm gonna release a video later this weekend, summarizing, shortening everything that we have described inside the microscope, keeping to the best of my ability what we've determined. And then we'll come again, another time, another day, because I would like Insight and I'd like Serial to be involved, so we're not jumping around too much there. But the Microscope
Yeah.
Microscope
And
is
maybe
definitely,
get those straight.
yep, get a few of those drakes, and Microsoft is definitely one of those games that you can pull people out, pull people in, and repeat it all over again. So, Utogi, you'd
Yeah.
like to see more about aircraft rendered useless.
Sorry. Carrier.
Carrier rendered useless. Interesting. All right, all right. And then, Logic, do you have an idea for the next lens? Something you'd like to hear about?
Hmm. I wonder if, I mean, can we kind of define the area that the ship sails through? I mean, that's kind of a long overarching theme, but is there a particular region of the world that this is happening?
Yeah, that could be
I mean,
interesting.
maybe they're in the. I guess if we have to visit Turkey, then maybe this is a Mediterranean,
I think so.
ship where this is happening.
You want more. So your focus is on the world or
Oh,
the
well, yeah,
setting.
the locality or ocean within which most of this activity is happening. Is it actually, are they sailing around the world constantly?
Gotcha. I think that works.
Defined body of water?
I'll definitely allow that.
And if you want to do this, like, could be like an era thing, like, oh, we're in Mediterranean for this period, and another period is defined by moving on to a different ocean. That could give a transition, a flow to the story. Could be they stay in one area, but you'd always be going from spot to spot.
All right. So when we pick up next, we'll try to focus on more locations that the events, periods, scenes occur in, along with the option of our two legacies right now, the information about how the carrier is rendered useless and the horrors of the new world. Alrighty. I hope that everybody's had fun, and we'll see you next time. Hopefully not too long from now. I'll, like I said, release a short video describing what we've defined about the world so far, maybe a little bit of hype, and next time you see us here in the Conclave, we'll be talking about next steps. Thank you for listening.
Nice. And we still need to define the apocalypse, which is, I mean, we've left that kind of open. That would definitely be something to entice some other people to come in and kind of figure out, well, what was it?
How did it
I guess
happen?
when we define the horrors of the new world, and silence, that's really where you have to tell people what happened.
As we get closer and closer. Correct.